This video is sponsored by Ren, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So this is the section of the food forest that I first started probably about 4 to 5 years ago, closer to 5 years ago. And when I started it, I started with some key trees. I started with a peach there, a peach down there, 2 pears, and then we ended up adding the serviceberry in here just because there was a lot of room in between. And those are kind of the core overstory trees of this little guild. You know, it's a bit of a larger guild, but this kind of food forest area. And those trees are all store named. They're all varieties that come from, you know, known genetics. However, as the years have gone by, I've actually taken all the fruit that drops off my trees and I'll plant them. And we've got stuff like this right here. Careful, I don't step on anything. And just an example, this is a peach seedling that I planted probably 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. And it's coming up nicely. And we've also planted a bunch more around here and subsequently dug them up. And we're also making cuttings of stuff like haskap and raspberries and elderberries, and we're transplanting them. Now, the important thing to know when you're taking a cutting of something, like say these haskaps, these are actually a cutting from off of one of my other plants. And when you take a cutting of something, you're actually reproducing the genetics, you're cloning it. When you're taking a seed from a pear or a peach, for example, and then planting it, you're gonna get, just like humans do when they have babies, you're gonna get a mix of the mom and the dad. Whatever pollinated that fruit tree to make the peach, the seed is gonna be a mix of the two of them. Now, most fruit trees, when you buy them, will actually have something called a root stock, which is a tree that's known for growing really strong, deep roots that tend to be, in my area, very cold hardy, very cold resistant. But the genetics of that tree might not put out the best fruit. So what growers do then is they'll graft. They'll cut off part of that tree and they'll graft on a known variety of really good fruiting wood. So when you take the fruit off of a really good fruiting wood and plant it, you might get a peach tree that is maybe going to be a little bit susceptible to cold temperatures because it doesn't have that really good root stock. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a bad tree. You might get a great tree, but it's just a little more unknown than getting a really good rootstock and then grafting on a really good fruit. Additionally, depending on the fruit, some trees grow really well from seed. They kind of resemble what the parents are. So if you have a good fruiter with the parent, you're going to probably get a good fruiter with the child tree. Some not so much. Apples and pears are notorious for kind of giving a very wide variety of who knows what you're going to get. On the other hand, some of the fruit trees that aren't really developed as deeply, such as like say sea buckthorn or even pawpaws, because the genetics of those trees hasn't been cultivated by humans for thousands and thousands of years, you might actually get the best pawpaw on the planet. So where it makes sense, I'm a really big fan of planting the fruit that I get and just seeing what happens. Now, obviously, when you have a little bit more space and room to do that, it's a lot easier to say that that's a good thing to do. If someone's in a small backyard, I really do think that you should just go and buy a store-bought tree. I think that's really the way to go about it. Got some pollination going on. But for where it does make sense and you do have maybe a little bit of room, I think it's a really good idea to plant the odd seedling. You never know what's going to pop up. You never know how they're going to do in the future. And a tree that grows right in the spot that it was planted and then grows from there is going to get a really nice deep taproot. It's going to be a very strong tree. It's going to be a lot stronger than if it was to start its life out in a pot and then be transplanted. Now, that's not just a good idea for fruit trees. It's also a really good idea to do that for annual vegetables, because annual vegetable seed packets that you get in the store, they basically take all the seeds, they give the biggest seeds to the growers, they give the next biggest to bulk buy, and then the tiny little seeds that you get left, that's what you get in those little packets from Walmart or Lowe's or Home Depot. If you save your own seed, then you get to kind of take your fruit or your vegetable and you get to pick and save the strongest seeds out of there and use those on your own land. So when you're starting your permaculture journey, definitely go with a few, known varieties. Some known varieties that are going to produce really well and you know you'll get something good out of it. If you've got the room, still do that. However, if you do have the room, always plant every seed that you can. You never know if you're going to want to start a business where you're selling plants, but at the same time, even if you don't, you never know if you're going to get some variety of sea buckthorn, for example, that you planted from seed that is gigantic and produces large berries, sweeter berries, healthier berries. Who knows? You never know what you're going to get. So I always say experiment, experiment, experiment. The genetic diversity of our food has gone down 100-fold in the last 100 years. So it's really important that we build a robust, deep pool of genetics, and the only way to do that is not by cloning, it's actually by planting more seeds. So the next thing I want to talk about is changes that we've made to our lives that's allowed us to kind of live more in harmony with nature, and also it's allowed us to save money. Ever since this channel started, I've been saying a few things. Start growing your own food and start spending money in ways that returns the surplus back to you. And that's what I want to talk about now. Now, one of the things we've started to do very recently is support Wren. Now, Wren is a company that allows you to calculate what your carbon footprint is, and then by supporting Wren, you're supporting projects that then offset your carbon footprint. And the thing that I like the most about it is that there's projects that Wren does that aren't only about sequestering carbon, they're about restoring nature. This is why the thing that I'm supporting the most with them is tree planting projects, specifically in Kenya, because this is really where the world needs more trees. These are going to be the hardest hit areas that are going to be really struggling with what's coming in the future. Not only just climate change, but economic inequalities that will help lift these people, out of poverty and give them an economy. Now, on the Wren portal, there's suggestions for other ways that you can not only save money, but also sequester carbon. Some examples are switching your electricity producer or making lifestyle changes, such as reducing waste, traveling less, taking public transportation, eating less meat, considering going vegan. A bunch of ways that we can make really positive impacts on the planet. I want to talk about three main things that we're doing here beyond just, growing food and trying to inspire others to follow us. So the first thing is the solar panels. We put solar panels up last year, and now we're actually producing the majority of our house's electricity costs. This means that the pond that runs pumps is now actually being very economical and very, very clean. The power is produced 20 feet away from where the pond pumps actually are. The second thing, and it's very well related to the first thing, the solar panel, is that my wife, she drives for her job, and myself, I also drive to my job, but my wife drives around while she's at her job. So for us, driving a gas car was really eating into our budget and also putting out a ton of carbon. So one thing that we did is the math on buying an electric vehicle, and for us it was an absolute no-brainer. Now, we ended up buying a Tesla Model 3, and the reason why I went with the Tesla Model 3 is mostly because of the charging infrastructure and how quickly you can charge from empty to full. You can really go on road trips with the Model 3. That's important to us. We have kids in hockey, and they play rep hockey, and they're traveling somewhat far for their games. It's really important that we can go far, charge up, and come back home. Or if we're going on a big long tournament, we can do the same thing. But what's really nice is that every single day we start the day with a full gas tank, courtesy of the solar panels. The third thing that we're doing to reduce our carbon footprint is to eat way less meat. We're also going to be raising our own chickens, so even our eggs are going to be coming from local. And I can actually chop and drop my comfrey that's all over me, and I can feed that to the chickens. I can grow watercress and duckweed in my ponds, and I can feed that to the chickens. And then we are going to have, mushrooms and raspberries and strawberries and grapes growing all around the chickens so they can free browse. We're also going to be doing some compost turning where the chickens can turn the compost, get access to, bugs and worms and that kind of really yummy stuff. Very high protein diet for the chickens. Now, all three of these things, you'll notice a very, very common theme. They're not just things that help save the planet. They're not just things that help reduce the carbon footprint. Because I think if you're zeroed in on just that one thing, it's not going to be sustainable. You're not going to continue to do it if, you know, all you're doing is reducing your carbon footprint just for the sake of reducing your carbon footprint. But I think what's really good is if you can, you know, stack those efficiencies like we do in, say, in permaculture. All three of those things are actually me spending my money that I'm saving and spending it in a way that's then going to save me more money in the future. And this is a really key way to live your life to get towards financial stability and financial freedom. Not only that, these three projects are also leaving behind a legacy, teaching my kids that there's a greener way that we can live our life, and we can live our life a little more regenerative and in tune with nature. So if you want to learn more, you can learn more in many ways. One great way is to support Ren and then go check out their membership portal. They give you a whole bunch of really good ideas, and also you're going to be supporting a project that is helping other people, and that always just feels great. Plus, the first 100 people to sign up will get 10 free trees planted in their name. So check out the link below and consider signing up and supporting Ren just like I do. Now I want to talk about some ongoing maintenance that I do in order to keep my food forest running. And most of it is around finding where I plant all my little trees and making sure that they're not getting absolutely smothered. Oh, and on our way down, we'll actually check out a couple little guys here. Here's another seedling peach. This one I'd started under the peach where I showed you the first one, and I dug it up because we don't need, you know, 5 or 6 peaches. We gave a couple to Poppy, and this is one of them. We transplanted it here next to this duckweed pond that I'm going to use to kind of feed my chickens. And then we planted another one. We're just at the top of the pond here. And we planted another one. Oh my gosh, the dogs have been digging for squirrels. It's ridiculous. We planted another one down here, and this is right near the pond. And look how fantastic this one is doing. So this is another seedling peach. Who knows what it'll produce, but it'll be fun to check it out. Now, unfortunately, I just got the battery message on my phone, and I've got to run out shortly, so I won't be able to charge up and then finish this last section. So I'll try to do it pretty quick. This here's the Jerusalem artichoke patch, and on the north side of the patch, I'd planted a whole bunch of hazelnuts. And Jerusalem artichokes are really good at getting right up over stuff and smothering it. So you can see that I've kind of stepped down all the Jerusalem artichokes all around all these hazelnuts just to give them a little bit of light. And if I didn't do that, these probably would have died. So this is the one thing that I do have to just keep my eye on, is when you plant a very aggressive growing plant like a Jerusalem artichoke, and then you put other things in and around it, sometimes, depending on the timing, the Jerusalem artichokes will grow really, really quickly and will swarm and get up over it. Here's another hazelnut here, so you can see they will get quite a bit bigger. They'll get to 12 or 15 feet tall, but the Jerusalem artichokes will grow very, very quickly and kind of smother them out. This is a hazelnut raspberry guild. There's hazelnut there and a hazelnut here, and then cherries behind it. And some of the Jerusalem artichokes, you know, they might creep over, but for the most part we mow this path to just preclude that from happening.